Hello, I'm Will Hanrahan. In this series of podcasts, we're opening our FirstLook TV true crime archive for the first time. Each pod that you'll hear, you'll go behind the scenes of our productions. You'll experience what it's like to speak to families who are reliving the worst moments of their lives, and we hope you'll gain an insight into why people speak to us and why it's important that these programs are made. In today's pod, we're going to hear about a murder story, but it has a remarkable, chilling and awful twist. It's the story about how a man tried to kill his wife, Amanda Canales, and it's from Amanda Canales we'll hear.
Give me Mark.
Amanda Canales, AmandaCanales.
Thank you very much. We're kind of going to start from the beginning. Well, I know it's difficult.
It's been a while.
So can you tell me a little bit about your life growing up? Where you're from, what your family did?
I grew up in a really small town called Concrete, Washington, and my family had farms, and so my siblings and I would work on the farms, cutting asparagus and weeding and sometimes driving the tractor.
Sounds like a pretty great childhood.
You know, I hated it growing up. I absolutely hated farm work, but I grew to appreciate it as I got older. You know, the work ethic that it instilled in me, and there were a lot of great memories out there on the farm. So it was actually, my dad would joke that it was family bonding time, but and we'd roll our eyes, but you know, looking back, it really was.
Tell me about your relationship with your siblings and where you fit in. I think you were the oldest, right?
I was the oldest, yeah. I have a younger brother who's about 2 years younger, and then 3 younger sisters who were quite a bit younger. There's 10 years between the youngest sister and I.
Tell me a little bit about your younger sister, Alisha.
Alisha was...
Remember Alisha?
She had a huge heart. She just would do anything for anyone.
She's really important to the story, but first, let's hear from Amanda. We catch up with Amanda's story when she's 23. It's her 4th year of college. She's studying to become a doctor in Spokane, Washington State. And she goes out for drinks, as students do, with her friend Ari, and it's then that she meets the man who will become her husband.
I met Kevin at a Denny's. I was there with my friend Ari, and he and his friend were in the booth behind us, and he was kind of flirting, you know, kind of making eye contact, and then he stopped and talked to me on his way out. I think I was really focused on my nachos that I was eating at the time. He was smiley and flirty and seemed charismatic.
There's something you need to know about Amanda. She's a type A kind of person. She laughs about with our crew, you can hear it, about how organised her house is. When one of our producers speaks to one of her school friends, looking for background, he's told that Amanda is always a high achiever. You know, she's just one of those types. Even in middle school, she's dreaming of going to medical school and of becoming the first in her family to get a doctorate. And at first, Kevin's the same. He's in the Air Force, he's playing for a high-level sub-professional basketball team, a boxer too. But that all changes.
He hated being in the military. He told stories about a lot of racism and stuff like that, especially during boot camp, and he didn't enjoy it at all. So that's why he transitioned to the Air National Guard, where he only had to do like 1 weekend a month, I think it was, of duty, so that was better for him. After that, he started working at the VA hospital as a janitor, and I think planned to kind of move up the chain there within the VA.
There's something else you need to know about Amanda. She's unlucky in love. She's had 2 serious relationships, and both have ended with her being cheated on. So while Kevin isn't as ambitious as her, Amanda seems to appreciate that he is attentive and he's kind.
Kevin came across as very trustworthy and honest. I remember him telling me, this is before we were even dating, he said that he would share his passwords to his emails and anything really. And I remember thinking that was very different. I didn't use any of them, but just the fact that, just the gesture alone said something.
So given that she's had 2 relationships with fellas who cheated on her, this is all good. So the relationship with Kevin moves along. He transfers to Seattle and they move in together.
So in the beginning, it was fine. It was happy. It was normal, I guess. And we had a couple arguments or whatever, but nothing, nothing horrible. And it really started to shift pretty immediately after we got married.
So what happened after the marriage? Tell me about the honeymoon.
We went on our honeymoon right away. We flew out the next morning early, I think, and it was pretty horrible. So things started to change right away. So the first day we went to Orlando and we were at a water park, and he was in a bad mood. He was just being a jerk all day, walking ahead of me, just short and cold. And I was like, what is going on? And finally it came out. He was upset that I was wearing a bikini top so I had like a triangle bikini top, and he said every guy that was walking by was staring at my chest and I should have some modesty and all this stuff. So I was like, okay, that's, just really was surprising. But I ended up being careful about my wardrobe after that and not wearing anything that was low cut or showed cleavage and that sort of thing. I didn't see it as controlling or anything like that at the time. I just thought, oh, maybe he's old-fashioned, he's, kind of justified it that way.
I'm telling you this story, right, because it sort of sums up the dynamic of this relationship going forward. Now, typically when we do these interviews, we hear stories which in retrospect are red flags, but that's the problem. It's easy to look back and see a red flag, but when you're living it, when you're committed to a relationship and you're irritated by something or you observe something and you're not entirely sure you like it, you live with it, don't you? And Amanda does that. So Amanda and Kevin, they marry, they start a family, and what she sees is a new Kevin. Gone, really, is that caring, attentive, charming man she fell for. Suddenly, we have an all-new Kevin.
Kevin had already started to shift a bit. He became less and less affectionate. He didn't say nice things. He was kind of cold. And during the pregnancy, especially during the first one, I remember just feeling really hurt a lot. And then I'm married and pregnant and, having a baby and kind of feeling like stuck a bit, because then I'm really questioning my decision to marry him in the first place. And was this a bad choice? But, then I'm having a baby. So what else am I going to do? Yeah, I don't know. I had tried to talk to him a couple times about how I was feeling, and it just sort of seemed to go in one ear and out the other. There was very, very little communication. If I would try to discuss something with him, he often wouldn't even look at me. If he was watching a TV show and I would come in the living room and try to sit down by him, he literally would not even give me eye contact. He would keep watching the show and just kind of dismiss me. So it wasn't a good relationship in any kind of sense. Yeah, there was just no love, support, intimacy, anything.
Whenever we look to tell these stories, we look for people who saw what was going on, witnesses. We call them intimate witnesses to the things that were happening. And what we discovered at this point from Amanda's friend Ari was that Amanda was putting an awful lot into the marriage, but getting very little back from the marriage itself. She's the breadwinner, a successful hospital administrator, but she's also doing everything at home, loading, unloading the dishwasher, doing the clothes washing, putting them out to dry. As so often the case, as irritating as that is, a lot of people can cope with it. But the final straw comes because of the children.
We had some differences of opinion when it came to like parenting. There were some times where I felt like he was a little rough. I didn't realize at the time, like throughout the marriage, that he was being manipulative and controlling and all of these things. I just didn't, it didn't click that those were that type of behavior and that that's actually a form of abuse. I didn't know a whole lot about domestic violence or anything, so I just thought he's just a jerk.
So Amanda tells Kevin she wants a divorce. She's just been irritated once too often. He's not a good man to live with. He's not the guy she thought he was going to be. Now, it sounds simple, I want a divorce. It happens 50% of the time in relationships in Western society. Red flag here is that we know as true crime storytellers that when a woman tells a man she wants the relationship to end, there's a danger he's going to change. He's going to become worse than he was. So how does Kevin react?
He started to get a bit fixated on if there was another person, another man. It was like he couldn't grasp the fact that I just didn't want to be with him anymore. It must be, an underlying reason or something. And it was just his insecurities coming back into play. He started getting angry. And so the phone had a fingerprint unlock, and he was like trying to press all my different fingers into the phone and unlock it. And this whole thing went on for a while, maybe half an hour or so. And then he just hit me. He just punched me square in the face. And I fell back, and I was just shocked because he hadn't done that before. Then he was still kind of in this rage and still wanting to get in my phone, like that was his only focus. And then another blow, and they were full on hard punches. He was a boxer. He like regularly went to a boxing gym and trained. Somehow we ended up in the closet. It was a large walk-in closet, but he was kind of keeping me there. I had tried to leave a couple times, and he was sort of holding me hostage. And I realized, like, I'm not probably going to leave here until he gets what he wants. And so I unlock it. He's reading through everything, the messages with Ari, like all kinds of stuff, and gets even angrier, hits me again. And then he walked off and came back with a towel, like a rag, and started wiping the blood off my face. It was so strange. And then he hugged me and then left for work. I was just like, what just happened? People ask me all the time, why didn't you call the police then? It was just a million things, I was afraid that he would lose his job, and then, paying the mortgages and everything by myself would be a challenge. I was afraid what impact that would have on just his life and having charges, how the kids would view him later, all kinds of stuff. And then that he would be even angrier, and he would maybe spend a few days in jail and get out and be, more upset. So I guess for all those reasons, but I left after that. I moved out the same day and just packed a bag.
Amanda was at pains to answer a question. She almost asked herself the question, why didn't you call the police? And that is a question, isn't it? We'd all ask that question. He's been that bad, you should call the police. But the truth is, she does not know at that moment on this timeline, in that moment, a crucial point there, just how dangerous her husband can become. And over the next few months, we see that play out as he plays a kind of cat and mouse game with Amanda. On one occasion, he assaults her so badly as she's getting out of the car that her eyesight is damaged. She's in a hospital bed for days. Amanda and her children do move out. They move into a shelter. They have to get away from him. Amanda's story, incidentally, can be heard in detail on the Lifetime series of Meet, Marry, Murder, which you can catch in the United States, but also around the world on various platforms.
My vision was kind of messed up for a while, and a couple of my teeth had been broken, so I had to have those repaired. Bruises on my legs, and yeah, it was just shocking. I was with this person for 10 years, and I just thought he was an asshole. I didn't think he could be a murderer.
A lot of the interview we have with Amanda focuses on how the relationship developed. Meet, Marry, Murder tries to dissect the truths and the lessons behind a statistic we all know these days, certainly a lot of women do, that the person most likely to hurt you is the person you're sleeping with. 61% of women killed by men in the UK in 1 year alone in 2018 were killed by a current or ex-partner. And that was thoroughly researched by criminologists, but also by the BBC and a femicide census. But our story, Amanda's story, is a little different. There is a relationship at the heart of it, but the victim and the person pulling the trigger actually don't know each other. Because this is a story of a tragic, evil, awful mistake. Remember Alisha?
My sister was outspoken. You definitely knew where you stood with her, and she had a huge heart. She just would do anything for anyone, and that's what she was doing in her last days too. She was there to babysit and help me, and she was about to go down to Portland to help my other sister move right after getting off of a long shift, and just that was just who she was. So if she could help, she would be there.
Alisha Canales-McGuire, 24, just married. She and her husband, they're trying for their own children, their own family. In September 2017, she's babysitting Amanda's 3 children. Amanda, she's out of town on a work trip. At 1:55 a.m, the doorbell in Amanda's house rings. Alisha answers the door, and she's shot.
911, what is the location of your emergency?
Everett, Washington.
There were multiple 911 calls, 4 shots fired in the neighborhood.
I don't know what happened, but there were potentially gunshots.
I see a shot in the wall next to the door.
Did you see anything? Yes, I saw them run down the driveway.
She is lying in her own blood.
Amanda is across the country. She's in New York when she gets a call.
I was, just in the middle of this meeting, and I saw a call from my dad, and I ignored it. And then he called again, which is not uncommon for my dad. He'll often call back to back for something silly, so I ignored it again. And then he called a third time, and I was like, well, that usually doesn't happen. Like, he's really trying to get a hold of me. So I picked up the phone, and as I was kind of walking to the back of the room to take the call, and I can hear in his voice something was wrong right away. The way he said, Amanda. And he said, he killed her. Exact words, I can hear it. Like, it was 5 minutes ago. And I don't really remember, but I guess I fell to the floor and just screamed. I knew what my dad meant by he. I knew it was Kevin.
Did you have any doubt in your mind as to who was responsible?
I didn't. I went through the hypothetical scenarios, the what ifs, but none of them made any sense, like, what if this was a crazy person? What if, it was somebody that she made upset? Or It just nothing. It's like, no, that's not possible. It just wasn't possible. It was in my home where most people didn't even know where that was, and middle of the night, and it was just the only thing that ever made sense.
We know from the documents that the police immediately identified Kevin Lewis as a suspect. Alisha had no enemies, but Amanda did. Kevin has an alibi though. Security footage proves that he was actually at home at the time of Alisha's murder. So often the police will say that suspect number one when a woman gets killed is the man in her life. But the man in Amanda's life is at home when the murder of Alisha happens, and they can see that from security footage. Not every police force, wants to talk to us because, frankly, sometimes they just want to move on to the next case. But in this particular investigation, we were able to speak to the police and prosecutors. Detective Ted Betts was the chap who led the investigation.
Very frustrated that I had no evidence that Kevin was remotely involved. I had suspicion, but no probable cause for arrest, and certainly no probable cause to write any search warrants for anything to investigate his private affairs.
Right now, at the start of the investigation, all he knows is that two unidentified strangers have driven into the neighborhood, rung the doorbell, and shot a 24-year-old woman. He strongly suspects Kevin's involvement. Amanda's family strongly suspect Kevin's involvement. For 12 months during this period, Kevin is free. Might he try something again? Is Amanda safe?
So he's still just out living his life, and of course my whole family knows what this really was. This was supposed to be me, and so I'm still a target, so I have to watch my back. And my family was worried. My dad would sleep in the living room with his gun. Just everybody was on edge. I ended up moving into a shelter, a DV shelter. It was tough because he was out and hadn't been charged with anything for a long time. So even like my sister's funeral, we tried to keep it kind of a secret. We didn't publish it in the paper or anything like that, and just kind of told friends. And the funny thing about that is, even though her funeral info was a secret, it was standing room only in there. Like, the place was packed. So many people loved her and cared about her. But even then, there were people who didn't even really attend the funeral. They stood outside the whole time to kind of stand guard, and they were armed because they were waiting. Like, this could be an attack if word gets out or information gets out of where I am, and it's a known location. There could be, so we were kind of ready for some kind of attack at a lot of different times. And it's kind of ridiculous that you have to have armed people at a funeral, but that's how things were for a while.
You watch a TV true crime documentary and everything rolls out really quickly. It's an hour-long watch, but it's not an hour-long investigation. For Amanda and her family, months go by, no answers, and Kevin's still out there.
Did it feel like he's got away with murder?
Yeah, there was a time after the more time that went by after the murder, it started to feel more and more hopeless. And I remember talking to a psychic, and I'm a more of an analytical kind of logical person. So I was like, hey, I'm open to anything, any kind of clues or something that can point us in a direction, because it seemed like it was really stuck and there was no movement. And I remember yelling at the detectives and being like, are you guys even doing anything, So Yeah, it was really, really frustrating. I thought about killing him. I mean, I would never, like, I'm not the person that could ever go through with that, but I imagined it, you know, like, I wanted there to be some justice, and it didn't look like there was gonna be any.
And then one day, imagine the scene. To give you a description of Ted Betts, well, he's an older guy. He's wearing what you really could only describe as the quintessential policeman's suit. Walking along the street, you'd look across and say, I wonder where that policeman's going. He is classic central casting. Detective Betts sitting at his desk, probably drinking a coffee. Someone comes over to him, taps him on the shoulder. Ted, we've had a tip-off. Initially it sounds tenuous. Even Betts, he's pretty surprised as he hears this story. What he hears is this. Someone at a party in Snohomish County, it's the county next door, has overheard a girl positively bragging about a murder. And she's telling everybody she was involved and she got a big payday. And then, suddenly, an already busy office goes into a whirlwind of activity. Facebook, Instagram, every social media platform you can possibly think of is used to track down who the girl was at that party. You're now going to hear from police interviews the tapes of the conversations with 17-year-old Alexis Hale.
This is the statement of Alexis D. Hale. Today's date is April 4, 2019. The time now is 08:49 hours. I'm Detective Ted Betts of the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office, and this statement is being recorded at the Spokane Police Department. Can you give me your full name and spell it for me?
Alexis D. Hale, A-L-E-X-I-S. My middle name too?
Yes, please.
D-A-N-A-E. Last name A-J-L-E.
And what is your address, please?
Alexis named an 18-year-old called Jaredon J. Phelps, and he's brought in for questioning. We're about to hear Detective Ted Betts interview him.
All right, so before we ask you any kind of questions or go into anything, I'm going to be reading you your rights because I have to do that. You're in police custody, okay? Jay, this is a moment that you've been probably thinking about for a very long time, okay? It's here, and we have to deal with it. One thing I can tell you is that I know you're not the one who created this idea. I know that for a fact. I can prove it. I think you were probably caught at a vulnerable point in your life. You made a really bad decision. And I think that given the opportunity to explain yourself, you might be able to help yourself out a little bit, okay? One thing is, we picked up Alexis yesterday, and she talked to us. What I need to know is how this came about. If you were influenced to do it, if you were coerced to do it, if you were somehow finagled to do it, I need to know these things. Because I have been in all kinds of, I've been in your phones, I've been in your phone, I've been in your social media. I know a lot of things that you don't know that I know. And I've been doing it for a long time. Okay? I know you pretty well by now from what you put out in your social media, but I don't know you. I know you have remorse. I know you do. Okay? I know the tattoos that you put on your arm afterwards mean something to you. I know that you read scripture. I know you read about scripture. Okay? I know you're a Christian. All right? I know that you have been begging for forgiveness. I know these things. Okay? I'm a Christian. I know what that means. I'm here to help you tell your story. I'll respect you more if you tell the truth. But what you did, I think you did out of stupidity. And I think you did it out of desperation and not thinking. And plain old greed. It's one of the 7 deadly sins, right? Do you remember how much money you got paid?
Yeah.
How much?
About 24.
About $2,400?
Yeah.
Who was the person that put you up to this?
His name is Kevin.
All right.
Wow, what a moment.
Thank you.
For a year, Detective Betts has been trying to prove Kevin Lewis's involvement in the murder, and Jay Phelps has just named him. It turns out Jay and Kevin, they're cousins.
I was talking to the lead homicide detective, Detective Betts, and he said that there was some really good news, and he couldn't quite tell me what, but it was really, really big. And he didn't want to get my hopes up because, still some unknowns, but he's like, I think we have something here.
You're about to hear from the ride-along video. It's not often you get this sort of evidence all over the world, but in America you can. There's access to evidence like this. If you want to hear the entire ride-along video, by the way, check out the FirstLook TV YouTube site. It's pretty astonishing. Again, we're going to hear from Detective Betts and Jay Phelps himself.
When I initially took Kevin here, I had, where that car just pulled in up there at those apartments, that's where I had turned around.
Okay,
so
let's do that.
Alrighty. He just showed me where the house was, and I turned around and I was taking him back to his home.
Okay. So, what do you remember about this driveway?
I remember walking on the left side over there. I was standing right at that corner, if not maybe a foot in front of it.
Okay. So, when Lexi knocked on the door,
yep.
How far did the door get open?
It wasn't very far. She peeked her head out, and as Lexi was walking towards us, her back was to the door, the woman was looking at Lexi, and then I came around the corner, and it took her maybe, I want to say by the third or fourth shot, I felt like I was shooting the door. She had closed it very quickly, so.
Okay. And then, so what did you do as she closed the door?
She closed the door, and then I opened it back up, and then I think I let two more off, and then I want to say she closed the door again, or I don't know what happened after that, but I took
Where do you
off.
think you shot her those 2 times?
In the neck.
Okay.
Shoulder, I don't know.
Not sure.
I know it was in the neck area.
The neck area?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you close the door, or did you just run at that point?
I ran.
Detective Betts, he has his guy.
It was incredible, and they're like, we're charging Kevin tomorrow morning. And so yeah, it was great. It was such a relief. Still not complete relief, because a million things can go wrong, if we go to trial or whatever happens. So I'm trying not to get ahead of myself at that point, but just the fact that he was getting charged with murder was something.
How did you feel when you found out some of the shocking facts of this case, that you were supposed to be killed for $2,400?
That's what my life was worth, $2,400. Like, that's not even a month's rent. Like, that's a cheap used car. That's equivalent to a life. It just still is crazy. It's crazy to me that somebody would risk their life for that little of money. Yeah, that was unbelievable.
$2,400. That's how much Alisha's life cost Kevin.
I think for Jaredon, it was a little bit of like, maybe he didn't have a good understanding of value of money. Maybe he didn't have a lot of money. I don't know. So I think that seemed like a lot to him somehow. And then that combined with like street cred, or, just wanting to feel tough. I think maybe part of it was wanting to impress this girl, because she's been involved in a lot of different, kind of a rough life. Everybody thought she was, I think, 19, like even her closest friends. Nobody even knew her name. She had so many different aliases. They thought that her name was something different. The cops had a hard time tracking her down. It seems like she was involved in a life of crime and kind of like a bit of a thug herself, So I think Jay dating this person where crime and things like this are sort of romanticized, or it's cool, or that was the image I think he wanted at the time, and to impress her.
Kevin Lewis is found guilty of aggravated first-degree murder and sentenced to life. without the possibility of parole in January 2022. His accomplices, Jared and Phelps, Jay, is found guilty of first-degree murder and he's sentenced to 31 years in jail, while Alexis Hale, a teenager at the time of the offence, don't forget, she's also found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to 15 years.
Tell me what lessons or messages you want to pass on to people from, your tragedy.
I think take more pictures and videos. I don't have any videos of my sister except for one where she sent me where she was getting tattoo eyeliner and there's another one that's kind of far in the background of her chopping down some bushes with a machete. And that's it. That's all I have. And I just wish that I had more. And a lot of people say, like, oh, put your phone down and live in the moment and all that. And I say, screw that. Take the pictures and take the videos, because if that's all you have left, you'll want more of those.
If you could say anything to your sister, what do you think you would say?
I'm sorry and thank you. And I miss you. And I love you.
The voice of Amanda Canales, and we're so grateful to Amanda for telling us her story. She lives every day with the guilt of the loss of her sister. She told us that, and we sympathise and empathise with her for that. But we also are grateful that in trying to warn others of the dangers of missing escalation in domestic violence, that it could be you. So Amanda, thanks for your words, and thank you for listening. You've been listening to a true crime podcast from the team at First Look.